They got him. They got him, folks. But you know what? When I thought to myself, should I just not do the stream today? Should I just not do it? But I couldn't resist. I couldn't resist. We talked about Justin Ling yesterday and the little altercation I got in online war of words with independent journalist Justin Ling. And then I saw later, I woke up again this morning, even feeling not great. Woke up again this morning, kind of wanting to take it easy. And then I saw Justin Ling was still up to his usual BS. And I was like, you know what? I can't let this slide. I can't let this slide. I know we felt, and it looked like we kind of like got the upper hand yesterday. Maybe I could just take it easy, but I was like, you know what? I've had enough of this. I've had enough. Grab your cheese strings, gents, for going back on Twitter. Yeah. I just couldn't resist. I had to go again this morning. And I had yet another, I talked at length yesterday about my really revealing conversation with Justin Ling yesterday. And when it picked right back up where it left off today. And once again, I did find it.
Me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Hey, thanks, Alana. Thanks for gifting us up to Sean Mead. Oh, shit. I thought yesterday was a pretty revealing conversation with Justin Ling, which we covered at length. But then once again today,
you're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
It's Justin Ling week. Plunger Man. Thank you for the 2 months of tier 2. Oh, goodness. Plunger Man, thank you very much. But I thought our exchange today was also very, very revealing as to how the kind of like groupthink in Canadian media works. You know, sometimes some of this stuff is just hinted at. But just as it was yesterday, when Justin Ling basically admitted that his idea of a free press is to just ensure that any viewpoint that runs counter to this kind of U.S. State Department and NATO approved foreign policy talking points should just not be allowed whatsoever in our discourse. That's our apparent like free press that we enjoy here in Canada. But also, so again today, another very revealing conversation about not just the values of Justin Ling. I don't want to pick on Justin Ling, even though he does present himself as a very easy target to be picked on. You know, but revealing to like the mindset of the people that make up our entire media establishment. Very, very revealing. And we're going to look at this. We're going to look at this conversation today. And we're going to see what else we can learn from this little exchange I had with Justin Ling and I. But of course, we had a number of other people, dozens of other people jumping in there as well. This is the power of the blue check on Twitter. It's interesting. It's interesting, isn't it? People criticize me for being a blue check before. They want to use it like they want to frame me as being some kind of like elite journalist or like elite PMC or whatever they call it. But that blue check really allows me to break through this bubble that folks like Justin Ling are able to ensconce themselves in using these tools from Twitter. They're just able to block out all the plebeians, right? But with the blue check, I'm able to penetrate that. And it's like he feels the need to reply to me, whereas like there can be dozens of other of these of people that watch this show, people that follow us online, people that behave or believe similarly. There can be dozens of these people yelling at him, and he doesn't really acknowledge that it's happening. But he just can't resist replying to me, and when he does, I can't help. Again, he's replying to me, and I think all his replies are so illuminating to not just how he views things, especially when it comes to like global geopolitics and these conversations about human rights, but how this viewpoint is basically the only one that's tolerated in our media class. I wonder if a blue check doesn't see a lot of responses because the algorithm decides not to show them. Oh yeah, Run. Usually the algorithm detects who are the people yelling at you. So you really have to look. You have to look to see those replies if you really want to. If you don't want to, you don't have to. The algorithm knows who has the correct opinions and highlights them. To be clear, that was in reference to you not liking every single one of my tweets. Oh, I didn't notice that, Marty. Oh no. I was more just focusing on my ensuring that I could get the best possible argument out there that would make him continue to reveal his true beliefs in the way that he was. How does the blue check relate to the friendship triangle? Well, me having the blue... That's the thing, folks. It's our blue check. It's our blue check. It's not just mine. This is the community's blue check. This blue check allows the opinions that are expressed in this community to penetrate this ideological bubble on social media, okay? This belongs to all of us. Not only does it allow me to accumulate more clout as well, secondarily, which then filters down to you as part of the trickle-down clout system. Okay? It's funny, I believe it was Left Hand Stu was actually... Left Hand Stu from this community was DMing me about this, saying, I wish I could have this blue check. And I'm seriously Twitter regrets every single day that they gave me this thing. It's funny because the reason I have a blue check on Twitter is because I wrote a few articles about professional wrestling in Vice magazine and Paste and a few other things. I really kind of tricked people into giving me the tools that I need to be taken seriously. And I'm wearing one of my old pro wrestling shirts too. I'm wearing my New Japan Pro Wrestling Wrestle Kingdom 9 t-shirt to show my credentials, my wrestling credentials. Justin Ling is the brain of a golden retriever. Is that what we're talking about? Well, Pelicans, honestly, I'm not sure. You know what? I don't know if Justin's going to watch any of this stuff. I mean, if I was him, I probably wouldn't. Why would you watch something of someone talking about why they think your ideas are bad? I probably wouldn't. But if Justin is watching, that's the thing. I don't think he's stupid. I don't think he's a stupid person. But I think that not just Justin Ling, but people, like-minded people such as Justin Ling, their brains have been very twisted up. It's gotten all twisted up through decades, through growing up, being inundated by constant Western propaganda. Okay, they've become all twisted up inside. I don't think it's a matter of being stupid. But like I was saying, in his arguments that he was making, I think it is really revealing the ways that he is really dedicated to enforcing these kinds of rigid international hierarchies, despite being able to apparently hold still this idea that we also commit human rights abuses and things like this. He was the less intelligent host on a show that also included Jen Gershon. I never actually listened to it. I just thought the premise was so silly that it was whoa, you like Chapo Trapos? Well, this is the Canadian version, and it's Justin Ling and Jen Gershon. I was always I don't know about that. So I just didn't listen to it because I generally don't listen to or engage with things that I know are just going to upset me. Right? But that's the thing. I think he's a victim. He's a victim of a lifetime of being inundated with this kind of Western propaganda, and he has in his approach to foreign policy, he has a very like Western chauvinist view as a result. And I think he's engaging in a lot of projection when it comes to talking about the human rights issues in other countries. Okay, or talking about his countries, when he talks about China, or when he talks about Russia or Ukraine or any of these foreign policy issues, or Bolivia or Latin America, famously, it's not a coup. He's got a very Western chauvinist viewpoint. A viewpoint that's just seemingly, despite sometimes that he might be kind of wringing his hands, he might be kind of dancing around it a little bit. He might be kind of trying to make a nod towards acknowledging our own sort of crimes. But time and time again, when it comes to these foreign policy issues, wouldn't you know it, the viewpoint of folks like Justin Ling always seems to coincide with that of the United States State Department, NATO, and these like neoliberal, these Western structures that have dominated this kind of foreign policy for decades and decades now, to tremendous, disastrous results all over the world. It just seems like with folks like like Justin Ling, time and time again, their views just end up aligning with literally like the most powerful people in the world. Just listen to Zizek on the latest Chapo, and he definitely seems to reflect your concerns. The acceleration towards a new Cold War and neo-Fukuyamahism is incredibly dangerous. I'm getting mixed reviews about that interview. I guess I should probably listen to it eventually. And that's it, Piss. The education is designed to churn out chuds like this. And especially people that are connected to this like journalism establishment. Even people that position themselves as being like outside of that system somehow, which Justin Ling does, right? He calls himself like an outsider. He kind of positions himself like, along with like the Canada Land crew of being these kind of like renegades that are outside the media system. Lo and behold, though, when it comes to these foreign policy issues, time and time again, it's the fucking NATO talking points. It's United States State Department talking points. Always. With no deviation. And it's always the things that we talk about endlessly on this program. The projection, the chauvinism. We really saw that today. Let me just open up my delicious, refreshing Diet Coke here. In examining the so-called free press, just need to look at no further than how many communists have jobs at the New York Times, CNN, MSNBC. And I brought this up. This is the thing, these people like Justin Ling that worship Western liberal democracies, that think that our way of democracy is the only way of having a democratic society, that think, we've committed human rights violations and we've done X bad thing and Y bad thing, but these other countries are much, much worse. They fetishize this. They fetishize this kind of stuff about our civil society and our free press. And that's been one of the main things we've talked about endlessly on this show, right? About how much of a fucking mirage our so-called free press even is. And how much of a mirage our so-called Western liberal democracy even is. It's like people like Justin Ling, it's like they're so anxious to be like continue to be plugged into the matrix, right? They just can't admit to themselves that they've been lied to. They can't admit to themselves that they've been lied to about like foreign policy, all these foreign policy goals of the last several decades, and who the bad country is and who the good countries are. They can't admit to themselves that they've been lied to about our amazing, incredible freedom of speech and free press and free exchange of ideas. They approach this idea that all these things are just complete illusions, complete mirages, but they can't quite grab onto it. They need to wrap themselves in this kind of like false knowledge that all these things are still like true, that we do have this enlightened Western society, this enlightened democracy, this enlightened freedom of speech. They have to wrap themselves in this, like this comfortable blanket, right? Because the truth is too terrifying to them. I guess we're kind of just jumping right into this, aren't we? Since I got started late. Anyway, we're gonna get into this exchange here. Okay? Let me just eat my apple, okay? Give me that. Give me that much. I'm gonna eat my apple here. And then we'll talk about it. I set the stage for you. Let me eat my apple, and then we'll talk about it. Yeah, and having a scapegoat that the propaganda can point to and say, well, at least we're not as bad as them, huh? You wouldn't want to live in China now, would you? So I guess you have to live with and like what we've got. That's it, crybabies, and that's exactly the thing that's going to be we're going to see today. It's that for folks like Justin Ling, like no matter what crimes that we commit in Canada, domestically, or with foreign policy objectives, no matter what crimes we commit, there's always these other countries are always just a little bit worse. They're always just enough worse that we have to support this effort to destabilize these places. We're bad, but these other guys are way worse. This is the thing that I reject now, okay? This is what I just reject this idea. And it makes these people really uncomfortable. Oh, good luck on your final, Ryland. Thanks for boosting the numbers. Hell yeah, thank you so much. So I'm just going to sit here and eat my apple. And then we're going to start talking about the really serious shit. It's a Honeycrisp, Sean. The superior kind of apple. In all honesty, though, like, folks, it's what does make me feel like a little bit encouraged with like social media and Twitch and all this stuff and Twitter. I know in the long run it's not the most important thing. Like, I do understand this. But just the idea that there's an avenue to express these ideas in a setting that like millions, thousands or millions of people can potentially have access to these ideas. Like in our entire media establishment in Canada, there is no one that's out there presenting the viewpoint of like, I think we should cooperate with China and just making the arguments that we make here every day on this show. This is not part of our like marketplace of ideas. It's not part of our discourse. It's just this viewpoint is completely just not presented. And I do think it's important that we have been able to build up these platforms and carve out spaces on these platforms where we can penetrate that. Yeah, he was getting slapped around today and yesterday. It's been 2 straight days of this for Justin now. And that's kind of what I mean. It's like in a media establishment that didn't have social media, this whole Olympic storyline would be going on, and the range of opinion we'd be seeing in our media would be like, it's good to do a diplomatic boycott versus like why aren't we doing even more? That would be the spectrum of ideas that would be allowed to be sort of presented in this kind of supposed free exchange of ideas, marketplace of ideas kind of thing. And having the ability to go here on Twitch or go on Twitter to do this kind of stuff, and push back on it, and not only push back on it, but like show that our ideas are actually more popular than their ideas. It's not even that we're like presenting this viewpoint, it's that like we're the ones that are correct, actually. And you're the ones that are wrong. You're the ones that are on the wrong side of history. And that we have a forum to sort of present that. You know, it's not nothing. It's a good question, Netlocked. The thing that I find surprising is why the average Joe liberal isn't questioning why Canada isn't doing anything further if China has concentration camps and committing genocide. Like a diplomatic boy, yeah, we're not sending our diplomats to the Olympics for this supposed like historical, you know, unprecedented, egregious human rights atrocity that's happening. That is escalated further than anything that's happening in the world. That we're going to not send our diplomats to the Olympics over it. That's why I would like people like Justin to like to really like dig into where they're trying to go with all this stuff. Like, what do they think should happen? We're sending passive aggressive emails. It's just pathetic. Honestly, it's pathetic. And just like think about how the rest of the world sees us. Think about how the global south see like what global south countries and developing world countries think when we take these like supposed moral stances about human rights. How fucking ridiculous must it be for these people to just be like, oh, there's Canada and the US and fucking Australia grandstanding about human rights again. It's just so preposterous. No one believes this except us. Like, let's hear, if that's what you think is going on, then what should we be doing then? Like, these people, I think they should, because all these people kind of pass off as being like, oh, I'm anti-war. No, I don't support imperialism. No, I don't support the military and all this stuff. But like, what are you saying then? Like, what do you support? Imagine G giving more than 30 seconds thought to this. But in all honesty, I think they are going to give more than 30 seconds thought to it. We're deliberately insulting them. And China's not at a point now where I think it feels as a nation like it needs to just like take these like intentional deliberate provocations from the West and these intentional like insults, these like completely hypocritical insults coming from the fucking formerly colonialist countries that have been murdering and genociding their way across the fucking planet for the last several centuries. You know, it's insulting. And like they're getting to a point where they don't need to take this shit. In fact, like what I don't know if this will happen because as we know, I think more often than not, even though China won't take these things lying down, they are interested in trying to pursue like overall normal relationships with us because they know it's in everyone's best interest. I don't know if this would be the right thing to do, but why doesn't China start launching a serious investigation into human rights crimes in the United States or Canada, and repeatedly petitioning the UN to send inspectors into Canada and the US to investigate serious crimes and credible allegations of human rights atrocities? Why don't they do that? They could. But I missed a chat that I wanted to respond to. They can bring up our hunger and poverty issues as well. There's no shortage of very credible, very serious crimes that they could make a international issue out of if they wanted to. Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't China just say, "Come look and see for yourself"? They did. They said, "Come here and check it out," as long as you're not coming here with the mindset of guilty before proven innocent.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
TRRS Sankara.
Thanks, Critical Mass. Thanks for the 2 months of Tier 1. That's their position, though, right? Come and check out what's going on, as long as you're not coming here with a guilty before proven innocent mindset, which we clearly have, considering our parliament formally accused them of genocide and all these things have happened before this investigation ever took place. They're saying, don't come if you're just like going to try and find evidence to prove the thing that you've already determined is happening. U.S.-Mexico border. All countries have the right to criticize us for genocide. Yeah. They really could do that. They could start spearheading an international movement to investigate Canada, both Canada and the US, for very serious human rights crimes, of which there is significant documented evidence. Not like, oh, we have got a couple satellite pictures. There's more substantial evidence than that of these human rights atrocities and crimes that have been going on. It's not just like, oh yeah, we have like a few drawings. We put together a white paper and there's very scary illustrations inside. There's nothing like that. There's like actual video evidence of some of the worst human rights atrocities you can imagine.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you for gifting a sub, Don Dark Sony. And frankly, I think they should do this. Like, they really don't have to take this kind of bullshit from these hypocritical former colonialist countries anymore.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Don Dark Sony, for gifting another sub, and thank you, Comrade Social Distancing, for gifting 2 subs. Biden is doing an actively shittier job than Trump on immigration, lifting poverty, and arguably coronavirus. Even though that is one area where he's been hampered by like a whole conservative media establishment that's trying to kill the people that listen to it.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
So the media's recourse is to remind us all that at least you're not communist China. Remember, China bad. That's right. That's exactly right. Of course, they don't understand that we do it by accident, while they do it with nefarious intent. Of course, Robert. Thank you, Lodane, for the 100 friend coin.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
I guess I should tweet that I'm live, right? Maybe Justin will come join us. Who knows? Maybe Justin will come join us. Thank you, Sebs.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
China.
Thank you, Sebs. The slob sluso slow slight.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
And thanks Adobe Cult for the 300 friend coin. And thank you, Alana, for gifting a sub as well.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old
Adobe
Rob
Cult
to talk you through all this.
For gifting a sub. Look at that. Poggers. In all honesty, I think they should. I think China should spearhead a very serious international investigation into both our human rights atrocities and our fake democracy as well. I want international election observers analyzing the democratic structures in our society to see if they're intact or whether they are indeed democratic. I want international investigators coming. No more Canada. No more Canada investigating its own human rights abuses. We're gonna get the RCMP on this right away. Don't worry. We're looking into this stuff very strongly. No more Canada investigating its own human rights crimes. I want international investigators coming to Canada.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
To investigate the very real, very serious, documented human rights atrocities that this country has been a part of, enthusiastically a part of. Okay, in Canada, in Latin America, in the West Bank, in Yemen. Why are we allowed to investigate ourselves for, like, genocide? Make that make sense. It's, we're accusing countries of genocide. The report
we simply
on missing
use
and
the
murdered
computer to mark up the size of the
Indigenous
account.
women and girls. The report on missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls came out 2 years ago, which very clearly outlined all the ways that this country,
good old Rob, to talk you through all this,
is guilty of ongoing genocide against Indigenous people. And it was just completely ignored. It was almost openly mocked in our media class. And we have yet to make any moves to rectify the actual, like, serious crimes and allegations that are being that are outlined very specifically in these documents, whether it's the report on missing and murdered women, Indigenous women and girls, or the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report. I had people talking about Canada. Well, at least we have a Truth and Reconciliation report.
You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Siscat, thanks for the tier 1 sub. And thank you also, DRP50.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
So I have people, and we're going to look into this more, but I have people saying, like, well, we, of course we did human rights abuses, but, we have this Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Oh, congratulations to us. Let's give ourselves a nice round pat on the back for our Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which we have systematically ignored all the findings of, and we've ignored all the recommendations that were part of this commission. Congratulations to us. This commission, which specifically mentioned graves outside of residential schools in 2009. What year is it this year? It's 2021, and we're still only just barely beginning to uncover this fucking horror. Despite Indigenous people telling us through all kinds of different avenues, including the TRC, that this shit has been going on for generations and been ignored and stonewalled at every turn. So what good is the TRC? Are we really are we going to brag? Are we going to brag about our ability to, like, look backwards and fix these issues and walk the path of reconciliation as we're still we have RCMP officers going to assault Indigenous folks on Wet'suwet'en territory in BC in order to build this Coastal GasLink pipeline? We have that happening right now. We've got Indigenous kids dying in foster care by the dozen this year. Not in the past, but this year. These are actually serious crimes, ongoing crimes, Indigenous people in this country have outlined very clearly how these crimes are ongoing and continue to be perpetuated, and we're just supposed to investigate ourselves, and B, just it's the state that's being accused of the crime that's also responsible for coming up with like the punishment or coming up with like the reconciliation plan. It's just a complete joke. We need an outside investigation and an outside legal system resolving this matter. Why? In what legal case is the person being accused of the crime also being charged with like how the process to investigate this crime looks, and what justice is supposed to look like for this crime? That's our Western justice system. I'm kind of getting way ahead of myself here, but it's true. This is the level of hypocrisy, though. I just find it maddening. I find it fucking maddening. And I genuinely, honestly, 100% do support a outside, external investigation into the crimes committed by the Canadian government.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob
and an outside, external legal system to determine who's responsible for that and what the punishment is going to look like and what the reconciliation is going to look like. Jesus, Don Dark Sony, thank you for the 3 gifted subs. Look at that. Thank you so much, Don Dark Sony. The level of support, I really appreciate it. There's an order of magnitude of hypocrisy. Ugh. Fucking ridiculous.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Outrun. Thanks for giving a sub to Clueless.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
And Sinshal for 100 friend coin. Very kind of you. Oh my gosh, Don Dark Sony. Another gifted sub from Don Dark Sony.
You can count on me.
Ducking
You're gonna have
Fork.
Good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I'm so sick of the simultaneous self-recognition, then whataboutism every time I have a conversation about why China's not bad. It's so disingenuous. They are capable of recognizing our evils, but take responsibility for none of it. Too busy defending our national greatness. That's the really like the propaganda coup that's happened about this critical mass. It's because when we talk like, here's how twisted everything is. Here's how fucking twisted everything is. When we talk about our own history and our own crimes and our own complicity in massive human rights violations, people call that whataboutism. For talking about our own history, the things that our own government did, our own people did, that they did here in the country and they do around the world, which we continuously benefit from. In my view, whataboutism is to
count on me. You're gonna have good old
live
Rob
in
to
and
talk
benefit
through all
from this kind of like a violent society, and then say, well, what about these other countries that are even worse? That is whataboutism, because you're literally living in this society and benefiting from it. John McCain's Ghost, thanks for gifting a sub. Jesus, everyone's very generous, everybody. Thank you so much. I've got full red lines here. I don't know what it is with the internet lately or what's going on. I don't know if we're targeted by the CIA or what, CSIS, or what's happening. Hopefully it's going to clear up soon. Whataboutism? What about Bobisms? Baby steps, baby steps, baby steps. Baby step to the bus. Baby step to the car. Baby step to the fridge. Classic. Classic pissed. They're afraid to admit the truth and that they still benefit from white supremacy. This is kind of what I'm getting at here. They can't admit these fundamental truths. We're going to get through this buffering section. We're going to get through this. It's the lack of dancing. It's the lack of yacht rock. That's right. I was ranting too much.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Pissed. Pissed, thank you so much for giving others a very, very kind of you, Pissed. New Cold War. It was like if we were fighting like a silent war that was like entirely about coleslaw. The Cold War. Thanks so much, everybody. Thanks for contributing to the hype train. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate it a lot. I'm just let me see if I can. I shouldn't keep having to fucking adjust my bit rate and I've already adjusted all my frames and everything. Everything's all messed up. I don't know what is going on. If it's the Amazon servers or my internet or what is happening. It's very frustrating though. Okay. So let's look at all my homies hate white supremacist anti-tanky talking points. Let's look at this, okay? Again, I thought I was through with Justin Ling. I thought we had said everything we needed to say yesterday. Again, I try not to get into these online disputes. You know me. You know that I try to be a good boy. I try to be a nice guy. The whataboutism response is so stupid. It's literally like, I accused you of unspeakable crimes first, so any criticism of me after that is just whataboutism. Yeah. Again, what a lot of these folks would call whataboutism, I would just call like talking about basic facts about our history and society. So I'm just checking out some of the chaos in the chat. I'm kind of just trying to buy time until my buffering issues stop. I'm sure any moment now, everything's going to go back to normal. The bot is learning how to speak neoliberal double talk nonsense. Nightbot is going rogue. Nightbot got a lifetime subscription to TRRS and now is like become overloaded. It's going rogue. It's like Skynet. It's become self-aware. I love the refreshing, great taste of new Cold War. A taste for a new generation. Sean, the thing is, I'm getting these big error messages right now. So I don't know if refreshing is going to do anything. That's it. CSIS doesn't like that I'm talking about this. This is the problem. The new buffering Cold War. Yeah, any moment now this is going to be fine. Any moment now this is going to go back to normal and we're going to get serious talking about this. Do not resist, valued community member. Does Canada have shitty internet? I don't know. I mean, it's not great, but I don't know if it's shitty. I mean, it's all right. It's everything with my stream and the buffering issues and all this kind of stuff has been worse over the last week or two, it seems like. Turning the conversation inward toward your own country is a way of reminding people to focus on the gears of power within their reach. This is what I mean, Lazy Pajamas. I don't think it's that extreme. I don't think it's that extreme of a position. To talk about your own country instead of other countries. I really don't. I really don't think it's that much of an extreme thing. It's the Lingites. The Lingites doing a DDoS attack. Jesus. This is always so fucking confusing when I try to communicate with you guys in the past like this. It just trips me right out. It trips me right out when this happens. Looking at like that scene at the end of Interstellar. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I saw Dan Beckner trashing this guy on Twitter. Same. I mean, Dan's always going after Ling, but like Ling just ignores him. For some reason, he doesn't feel like he can ignore me the same way. I use wired internet, Red Wizard. Always wired. You know what? I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to go ahead with talking about this. And I'm just assuming that eventually things are going to go back to normal. And it's going to be fine. Okay? So again, I tried to walk away. I tried to walk away from my conflict with Justin Ling. I thought I had proven everything that I needed to prove yesterday. I wound it up. I wasn't even sure if this was going to work, but let's just get an update on yesterday. kind of on a roll yesterday a little bit. So here was yesterday's exchange, which we got into, which I ended up my own reply seems to be deboosted. This is what I mean about this kind of stuff, though. It's, it's not. Again, I don't want to place too much importance on Twitter and this kind of stuff, or ratioing and stuff. It's somewhat childish. Okay, I admit. But again, I think it's important to show people not just Justin Ling. Again, not just Justin Ling, but people like Justin Ling, to show them that, like, not only are we not going to, like, play this game anymore, play this game of, like, this respectability game in these foreign policy conversations. We're not going to play this game anymore. And also, our ideas are actually more popular than their ideas. It's not just that we're this dissenting voice that's getting a seat at the table. It's that we're flipping the table over. It's that not only are we getting to express these viewpoints, but these viewpoints are actually more popular than this, like, foreign policy consensus that these guys are, like, ensconced in. Okay? So you might think it's childish to talk about, like, Twitter or ratioing or stuff like that, but I think it serves a vital purpose. Right? It's not just getting a seat at the table. It's showing these people that we're not playing this game anymore, this respectability game about these foreign policy discussions, where you have to do everything. Whenever you talk about foreign policy in the country you live in, you have to say, well, China is bad, but we shouldn't be doing this. Oh, Iraq is bad, but Iran, obviously I don't want to support Iran, but we shouldn't be. Oh, obviously Venezuela is bad. Obviously Cuba's bad, but we shouldn't be. Oh, obviously Bolivia's bad. We shouldn't, let's not support Bolivia, which is obviously bad and authoritarian, undemocratic, but maybe we should. We're not doing this anymore. We're not playing this game anymore about this. Okay? And when we're able to do this stuff like this, it demonstrates to people like Ling that, like, we're not playing this game anymore. And again, our ideas are actually more popular. And that we are on the right side of history and they're on the wrong side of history. So anyway, I thought after yesterday that it was going to be done. I was like, surely Justin's not going to come back for more here. Surely he's not going to come back for more. But then I log in later on that evening, and he's back. He's up to his old tricks. Justin's up to his old shenanigans once again. Which is, like, I think this is an amazing way of framing this too. Because this is just, like, obviously this is just deliberately provoking people, okay? Right? Hey Tankies, new talking points just dropped. Let's click on this. This is the communique from the Chinese embassy in Canada. Let's read this statement. Or as Justin Ling puts it, as journalist Justin Ling puts it, this, like, official statement from the Chinese government are just tanky talking points, as he puts it. And that's the thing, Red Jam. I can be civil. Like, I don't think I was a huge prick to Justin Ling in any of these exchanges. I can be civil, but I'm also not going to apologize for my opposition to these kinds of, like, narratives. That is one thing that I'm not going to do. And I'm not going to equivocate, and I'm not going to fence sit, and I'm not going to say, like, oh yeah, I agree with all these things you're saying about how bad everything is, but, we should do. That's what I'm not going to do. I can be civil, okay? I can be civil to Justin Ling or whoever. I don't mind. I don't mind being civil. What I'm not going to do is apologize for completely rejecting these analyses and these narratives anymore. That's what I'm not going to do. And I'm not going to equivocate and fence sit. This is kind of one of the main things that I've tried to get across to people, like, throughout the run of this show, And I think that was not something that I planned, but it's been really helpful to be able to come in here each week and talk about this stuff with you guys, because it makes me more comfortable in just unapologetically making these arguments. Anyway, This is the statement from the Chinese embassy in Canada about this Olympic boycott, which Justin Ling referred to, very deliberately, provocatively referred to as, quote unquote, tanky talking points. Okay? It says, on December 8th, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau falsely claimed that there are human rights violations by the Chinese government, and announced, based on this groundless accusation, that Canada will not be sending any diplomatic representation to Beijing Olympic and Paralympic Winter Games. The Chinese side expresses its strong dissatisfaction and firm opposition to this, and has lodged stern representations with the Canadian side. Based on ideological biases as well as lies and rumors, Canada and a handful of Western countries have been flagrantly engaged in political maneuvering with the attempt to disrupt the smooth progress of Beijing Olympic and Paralympic Winter Games. Their clumsy performance can hardly find any support and is doomed to fail. Canadian side stands on the opposite side of the truth and facts. The Chinese people are in the best position to judge how China's human situation is. Now, China's human rights situation is at its historical best, a fact that is recognized by all those without bias. Canada, by contrast, has committed heinous crimes against Indigenous people. Until today, systematic racial discrimination is still severe in Canada. Canada is simply not qualified to be a human rights preacher, and is certainly in no position to judge China on this front. Now, I'm sorry. I know that this is upsetting. I know that this is upsetting to people like Justin Ling, who fundamentally believe this idea that no matter our mistakes that we've made or our historical issues that we've had with human rights, that they fundamentally believe that we are good people, moral people who deserve to be sort of the moral arbiters of international geopolitics. I know it's really upsetting for them to read these kind of things. This is inarguable. Canada is simply not qualified to be a human rights preacher, and is certainly in no position to judge China on this front. I know it's easy to just hand wave that away by saying tanky talking points. I know it's easier. It's easier psychologically to do that. Just to hand wave it away and say, oh, that's just tanky talking points. This is just a fucking inarguable fact. I'm gonna start telling trots and anarchists they sound like a lib when they call me a tanky. I mean, to say nothing of this, of people like Justin Ling saying tanky about people that want to have peace with China while they're advocating that we continue to arm and fund neo-Nazi militias in Ukraine because Putin bad. Right? We're making the argument. We're the ones that want peace. But like, we on this side of the debate, on the right side of history, we're the ones that are arguing for peace and cooperation. They're the ones arguing for hostility, antagonism, further tension, further conflict. And again, once again, this is how backwards everything is. Then they call us the authoritarians. They call us the tankies, literally for wanting to have peace and cooperation with this country. Again, I know this stuff it upsets them a lot. But this is just, you cannot argue with this. We're not qualified to be an arbiter of what constitutes human rights and what doesn't, and who's in violation of these precious human rights and who doesn't, and who deserves to be punished for human rights and who doesn't. We've abdicated that responsibility a long, long time ago. And I'm not surprised at all that China or any other country is starting to just completely reject these accusations. Why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they just completely reject these accusations? It's disgusting to them. They know the history, right? The people in the global south and the developing world know full well the history of, the British Empire, the colonization of places like Canada, of Canadians' imperialist acts in Latin America, in Africa. They know all about this. So we can hand wave that away as much as we want as tanky talking points. This is just the reality, and the rest of the world understands this. And we're the ones that appear fucking ignorant, like ignorant Western freaks for not grasping this basic concept that we have no credibility to lecture anyone about human rights. The Canadian side stands on the opposite side of the Olympic spirit. Canada held both Olympic Summer Games and Olympic Winter Games before, and should know the nature of Olympic spirit very well. However, what the Canadian side has done gravely violates the principle of political neutrality enshrined in the Olympic Charter, runs counter to the Olympic motto of together, and is a typical politicization of sports. The Canadian side's hyping up a diplomatic boycott without even being invited to the games is pure self-entertainment. The Canadian side stands on the opposite side of the trend of the times. Today, in the 21st century, peace, development, and win-win cooperation is the trend of the times and the shared aspiration of all countries. Clinging to Cold War mentality and ideological prejudice, Canada and a handful of Western countries interfere in the internal affairs of other countries under the pretext of human rights in an attempt to disrupt and contain their development process. This is firmly opposed not only by the Chinese people, but also by all people that love peace and uphold justice in the world. I would like to stress that the Beijing Olympic and Paralympic Winter Games is a gathering for all winter sport athletes and lovers around the world. It is them that should be in the spotlight. The preparation work of the Beijing Winter Olympics has entered the home stretch. The international community, including the IOC, highly recognizes the preparation work. Foreign athletes are looking forward to coming to China for the Games. We firmly believe that under the guidance of the Olympic spirit and the concerted efforts of all the sides, we will deliver a streamlined, safe, and splendid Olympic Games for the world. Canada must stop politicizing sports, stop disrupting and undermining the Beijing Winter Olympics immediately, lest it should lead to self-inflicted humiliation. Now, sorry, that was a long statement. I hope you're still with me. Folks, 0 lies detected. Right? 0. Where's the lie? Show me the lie. Once again, you can hand wave that if these things aren't make you feel uncomfortable. I understand the need and the desire to hand wave that away as quote unquote tanky talking points. But when you actually engage with what is being said here, find the lie. So again, rather than actually because listen, if Justin Ling's going to make these arguments, I feel like he should have an actual response to it. You know, this is his job. He's supposed to be a professional journalist. He should have a better answer to it. But this is what he leans into, right? Zero effort to engage with what is being said whatsoever. Zero effort to engage with the hypocrisy. Zero effort to critically take a look at what these accusations and whether they're credible or whether we have any credibility in leveling these accusations. Zero effort to do that. It's pure just provocative hate. Tanky's new talking points just dropped. So this is exactly why, even after we had gotten into that one altercation, that I was like, all right, Justin, I guess we're gonna do this again now. And once again, I'm gonna tell you that much as it was very revealing yesterday, this exchange I had with Justin Ling, also very, very revealing today. I guess I should I'll tweet that I'm live. I might as well, right? Okay. Did that. Do they think calling us tankies is going to hurt our feelings? First of all, no one should have ever taught people like Justin Ling this word. I don't know who taught them that word, but they should be arrested. That's what I mean. I think that is it's just a way to just delegitimize the entire like viewpoint that is critical of like the Western establishment, of Western foreign policy, of Western hegemony. Anything that's like critical of that is just now lumped into this category of tanky, which again, I'll remind you again, folks, who's the side of this conversation that supports peace, right? Who supports peace and cooperation? We do. It's the Justin Lings of the world that support more conflict and more tension and more hostility. But that's it. They've just tried to spin it into this pejorative that somehow the people that want to present this alternative viewpoint that runs counter to the like Western hegemonic viewpoint, the NATO-approved foreign policy viewpoint, the U.S. State Department approved foreign policy viewpoint. They just want to take anything that runs counter to that and put it into this category of tanky, and that allows them to just like completely compartmentalize it and discard it without interrogating any of their views or without really engaging with any of the ideas or the questions that are being asked. You know, that's what it allows them to do. As we know, folks, that's why we've talked about the dronies before. This is the classic droney category. It's always, and as we're going to discover, it's always projection, right? These people that time and time again find themselves supporting these military coups and imperialist interventions, funding and arming all these extremist groups, whether it's in Afghanistan or Syria or Ukraine. You know, they can't deal with the fact that they're the ones that are encouraging violence and bloodshed, so they have to project that onto everyone else. You know, it's sick. It's like sick and pathological. Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah. Just a sick society. Look, Marty. Look at this. Look at that. I'm a man of my word. So, but I wanted to interrogate this because, again, Justin Ling, for some reason, even though he'd like to just dismiss these viewpoints, for some reason he feels compelled to respond to me for some reason. He'll ignore, dozens of people that come from, or their families come from global south countries that don't have big media platforms in his mentions, criticizing this. But for some reason, the white guy with the blue check, he feels like compelled to like respond to me time and time again. So I wanted to get an actual answer out of him about this. I don't think people like Justin Ling should just be able to hand wave these away. We looked at the NBC statement. There's not a fucking word of a lie in there. Okay? There isn't. I know it's easy to just hand wave that away, but I didn't want to let him get away with this. So I wanted to hold him to account and get him to actually answer these questions. And he, to my surprise and delight, he actually did. So here's what I asked him. Right? And I'm sorry if you're on Twitter and you're just getting a recap of what happened on Twitter. I apologize. But if someone's watching this, weeks or months in the future, then this is more for them. So I wanted to ask him, though, do you actually have a coherent answer to any of these criticisms? Do you actually have a coherent answer as to how we have credibility to lecture other countries such as China, given our own egregious and ongoing human rights abuses? Or is it just going to be this like mocking, this hand wavy bullshit, provocative bullshit. You know, that's what I want to know. What's your actual answer to these accusations? When China says, like, what are you accusing us of? We know beyond any shadow of a doubt that you are guilty of genocide and racism and all these very same things. When China says that correctly, what's your actual response? Because it can't just be like, tanky talking points. What's your actual answer to that criticism? And look at this. He says, yes, orders of magnitude matters. We have abhorrent crimes. And look how revealing this is. Look how revealing this is, seriously. Does that mean, yes, orders of magnitude matters. We have abhorrent crimes in our past that we are, at the very least, confronting and trying to make amends for. We have ongoing human rights abuses that our free press and civil society agitates on. Yeah, we're totally making amends. This is what I don't like. I don't know, folks. I honestly don't think Justin Ling's a stupid guy. So he's either like incredibly misinformed and has been incredibly fucking twisted up with Western propaganda. This like Canada is great propaganda. Or he's deliberately lying. Right? That's because I don't think he's stupid. But so he apparently thinks that what they're being accused of is also orders of magnitude worse. These crimes are, of course, in our past. We're confronting and trying to make amends for. And then, of course, while we have these ongoing human rights abuses, it's our free press and civil society that's agitating on it. That's what's different. That's what's different. Yeah, of course we're still committing human rights abuses, but at least we have a free press that's talking about the human rights abuses. And at least we're trying to do the right thing and we're trying to make amends. But I just don't understand how you can still believe that. Again, it was like 2 or 3 months ago. It was not that long ago that we were having the national conversation about uncovering mass graves of children in this country. It was only a few months ago. As I mentioned before, our Truth and Reconciliation Commission have been begging us to look into this. In our apparent Truth and Reconciliation, which according to someone like Justin is evidence of our willingness to confront and make amends for these things. Well, the TRC openly talked about these mass graves in 2009. The TRC begged the state, the Canadian government, to give them the resources that they need to investigate this, to investigate these mass graves. And what happened? Nothing happened. Okay? Nothing happened. The report on missing and murdered women, indigenous women and girls came out 2 years ago, very clearly accusing this country of ongoing genocide, very meticulously researched and compiled. Okay, this came out 2 years ago. And our supposed free press had a conversation about whether it was too mean to genocide survivors to accuse Canada of doing genocide. That was our discourse that our civil society and our free press agitated on, which resulted in no change. It resulted in no police reform, no efforts to reform the system, no efforts for justice, no efforts to like hold people accountable for like crimes that have been committed. Nothing. That's how much our free civil society and our free press is worth. And that's the extent of our ability and our willingness to look to the past and try and confront these things and make amends for them. We were talking 2 months ago about mass graves in residential schools. We had orange shirts on in fucking October, and we've got attack dogs and heavily armed RCMP officers invading Wet'suwet'en territory right now, violently arresting Wet'suwet'en land defenders and their allies, including journalists apparently in this free press that we have. Literally like 2-3 months after our Orange Shirt Day, after our national acknowledgement of the fucking crimes that we committed. And according to Justin, this is like something we're in this process of confronting these things and making amends for it. The scale of the Native American genocide is like 120 million dead. We've talked endlessly about the ways that the fucking Nazis were directly inspired by these crimes. We literally wrote the fascism playbook in this country that the Nazis borrowed from. There's been zero effort to hold anyone accountable for this, except a bunch of bullshit about lowering flags and stuff like that. But we feel really bad about it, so it doesn't count. But the Prime Minister does a nice photo op at like a child grave and has a little tear coming out of his eye. So that's supposed to be evidence of our willingness to like confront these things and move on from it. Justin didn't stop there though, because this was like the signal for everyone. Because like oh boy, this ratio really is not going well for Justin either. It's been a rough couple days on Twitter.com for Justin Ling. As Duncan Kinney pointing out, the murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls report came out, and the charge of genocide was widely dismissed by the mainstream media. I haven't forgotten about this. This is an extremely radicalizing moment for me when this report was released, and paying attention to the reaction from the media class in this country, in our free press, in our supposed Western free press, the reaction from the media class to the murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls report was like extremely radicalizing for me because of the ways that they completely dismissed it. I don't even know if... I wonder if I could find like a headline. I should have looked ahead of time. I'm just trying. The headlines tell one story, but they're the media class in radio and on TV. This was the reaction to it. Was so fucking horrific. I'll try to find more examples later. But what Duncan's saying is absolutely correct. It was widely dismissed by the mainstream media, and as Nora's pointing out here as well, we talk about the residential again. We went over this yesterday. The residential school system. And even we talk about the horrors of the residential school system and how they ended in 96, but in reality, this practice only continued in our foster care system. We've got dozens of kids, Indigenous kids, dying right now this year. Not in 1996, not in 2006, not in 2016. This year, still going on. We fall back on statements and symbolism because it's a free out. And that's it. Because even when you have stories that acknowledge this genocide, or even when you have stories that acknowledge these crimes, what good are these stories and this like, you get the odd media story about it, but what good is it when it's not followed up with actual action, and in fact it's only followed up with the very same process just continuing? They never report the amount of homos that freeze to death every year in Saskatchewan on purpose. Like, there's literally people dying on the streets today. So a number of people are making these claims. Okay, a number of people are jumping in here. I'm trying to remind Justin of these things, these things that we talk about every day. I talk about how we just lowered our flags to half-mast and then continued on this process. This genocidal ethnic cleansing project. I'm really wondering, how can you watch footage coming out of BC right now and talk about these crimes of our past or making amends, pointing out dozens of Indigenous kids have died in Alberta foster care this year. Again, not in the past, not in the 90s. This year. And talking about our free press, which people like Justin Ling love to talk about, that consists of a wide array of viewpoints ranging from capitalism plus liberalism good to capitalism good, liberalism bad. That's our entire spectrum of ideas that get exchanged in this so-called free press. And our free press, which treats the idea of even mild social democracy as radical extremism, which you see in Canada when they talk about even the NDP, framing the NDP as somehow being radicals. But you saw that as well with Bernie Sanders' presidential run, with Jeremy Corbyn's presidential run. Look at in our Western liberal democracies, whether it's the UK or the US or Canada, the way that they react to people advocating for mild social democracy are treated like fucking pariahs in the media and are treated like radicals and extremists. Jeremy Corbyn was basically treated as like an extremist Jew-hating terrorist in the media, in the British media, for 5 straight years because he was advocating for like mild social democracy and was willing to talk about these foreign policy issues that a lot of other people are not willing to talk about. That's our free press, right? That's how our free press treats people with this kind of viewpoint. They're just openly hostile to it. They're treated like total pariahs, terrorists, sympathizers, radical extremists. That's our free press in Canada that Justin Ling likes to throw around as if it makes us somehow better. And here is ultimately what it comes down to, okay? Again, I appreciate Justin Ling for just saying the quiet part out loud. I'm glad we can just get this stuff on the table. This is what it comes down to. And this is the game that I'm not going to play anymore, okay? So first of all, it's funny how it goes very quickly from, hey tankies, new talking points just dropped, to everyone getting mad and then saying, I've committed myself to not arguing on the internet all day, but it's interesting how that happens, doesn't it? When you deliberately provoke people and then you're like, that they're out my haters are out in full force again. It's so fucking pathetic. But this is what it all comes down to, doesn't it? He says, I've committed myself to not arguing on the internet all day, but why would human rights abuses here preclude us from criticizing more egregious ones in Xinjiang? This is the thing that they want us to just agree on this basic point. And this is what I'm not going to do. I don't agree with this basic point. Well, yeah, we do bad things, but what they do is even more egregious, so we have to hold them to account for it. Well, guess what? I disagree. How about that? I do not agree. I do not agree that it's more egregious. Sorry. I know it's in our foreign policy discourse and our discourse about these like official state enemy countries for many years. We've had to kind of come to this consensus that Russia and China, all these places are bad, but that we do bad things, but they're even worse, so we have to contain them. That's been the basic consensus. And we have a little spectrum of debate that occurs within that consensus, right? That, yeah, of course we've done some bad stuff. These places are worse, and we still have to figure out how to resolve these issues and tell these countries how to live. This is what I'm not going to do anymore. I don't agree. More egregious. I just don't agree. I know this is a given to people in our media establishment. It's a given to people like Justin Ling. I do not agree that the human rights abuses that we talk about in China are, in fact, more egregious than the ones that we've participated in this country. before my wife and I met, she was doing some like investigative journalism type thing. I think it was writing a story and stumbled upon what sounds exactly like Starlight Tours, but it was happening in Alaska. Outrun, like no one should have any illusions that kind of Starlight Tours, that kind of thing, that we know about a few such cases. We know about a handful of these cases. We know, you know, I know. I think even somewhere Justin Ling knows. Everyone knows this shit has been going on all over North America now for decades. Not just in Saskatchewan, not just in Alaska. It's been going on all over the place, hasn't it? Do I want to know what a Starlight Tour is? Well, Red Scary, a Starlight Tour, that is what police in Saskatchewan, where this practice was discovered, would call the practice of taking Indigenous people who were often intoxicated, who were causing mischief or whatever, and putting them in their cars in the middle of winter and driving them out to the edge of the city or out into the countryside and leaving them there in the middle of the night in the minus 30, minus 40 degree weather and allowing them to die of exposure. That's what a Starlight Tour is. This is a practice that was going on in Saskatchewan. We know of many cases where this was going on, but what we don't know is that there are many, many more cases. It's not just Saskatchewan. It's not just Canada. It's not just the United States. This has been going on all over the place for fucking decades. I don't believe that these things that we talk about when it comes to Chinese, these Chinese human rights atrocities, that the Canadian government is right now feeling fit to lecture them about. I do not believe these things are, in fact, more egregious than the things that we have done in our own country that we live in and we benefit from. I don't think it is more egregious. The euphemisms that cops use are always so telling. It's because you can understand the glee that they take from it, the sick satisfaction that they take from it. That's why it's so disturbing, but it is revealing. My friend and I in high school wanted to be cops, and we went to an RCMP station for a visit, and they bragged about this. The beginning of the radicalization right there. This is what the RCMP and what our police system is supposed to do. That's our police system operating as designed. Again, the RCMP, which played a large role in working with the state and with the Catholic Church in conjunction with private interests, with the state and with the Catholic Church, worked in conjunction to take away children from their parents and put them in these school systems where they were killed, they were beaten, their culture was deliberately destroyed and intentionally destroyed. That's their whole purpose, similarly to the way that the whole purpose of the police department in the United States is to police black people and put black and brown people and immigrants and indigenous people in jail and away from society and into this like barbaric, cruel system that they can never escape from. That's the whole purpose of what these institutions are. So no, I don't think it is more egregious. This is, again, there's a number of replies. There's a number of replies to this. This is how I ended off the exchange, though. Setting aside all the issues with Indigenous people, let's just focus on the war on terror of the last 20 years. We don't even have to talk about Operation Phoenix and, Latin America in the 80s and 70s, or Vietnam or Korea, and these massive atrocities which we talk about often on this channel. Let's just talk about the last 20 years of the war on terror. We've got millions of civilians killed in this war on terror. Millions. Tens of millions of civilians displaced. The refugee crisis, which is a part that we don't talk about enough. The refugee crisis. that we deliberately caused, that the United States led this process. Canada was a willing participant in a lot of it. Canadian soldiers were accused of torturing, of handing over prisoners to be tortured. Canada has been openly supporting the U.S. while they've been carrying this out. And when you take all this information about what our own society has been up to, and the millions of people killed, and the millions of people displaced, and then you say, how can you focus on that when what's happening there is so much more egregious? That is pure projection and Western chauvinism. This is what I refuse to argue on this framework anymore. That these other countries are worse. They're not worse. They're not. Like, this is fucking unfathomable, folks. This is a piece from 2020. The conflicts since the start of the U.S. war on terror have displaced 37 million people. The study focuses on post-9/11 wars in which U.S. initiated combat or took part in military operations. Like, just, folks, think about the scale of that human rights crime. 37 million refugees. Unaccounted numbers of acts of sexual violence as well. Like, a lot of the stuff we talk about, we're only barely scratching the surface of what even happened. This is only the stuff that we really know about. Even when you get into the accusations about China and the Uyghurs and Xinjiang and all that stuff, even if you take the most hysterical, the most extreme accusations of what's going on, they haven't been able to name one person who has actually been killed in this process of violence and genocide. They'll talk about birth rates and things like this. There's been no, who's been displaced? What government has been overthrown? Where has there been a drone strike? Where has any of this been happening? They literally can't name one person. That's not an exaggeration. Even Adrian Zenz and all these guys. These guys whose only purpose in their career and in their life is to frame this in the most sinister and evil way possible. Even these people, they can't point to one fucking person that's been killed. And by the way, also worth pointing out that this violence and destabilization that we caused, take it easy, Red Jam, thanks for coming by, must keep in mind that this violence and destabilization that we caused led directly to the violence and destabilization that was happening in Xinjiang, which was resulting in extremist groups committing terrorist acts that were killing predominantly Uyghur Muslims in this region. There's a direct link between this chaos, this war on terror chaos, which we caused, and the violence that was happening in this region that initiated their response, which we're now criticizing right now. And I genuinely don't understand how someone how someone like Justin Ling can just hand wave this all away and say, yeah, we made a mistake. We made a few mistakes, but China's crimes are even more egregious. I genuinely don't get it. When this is what we've been overseeing, I wish someone could explain it to me. I wish someone could explain to me the thought process of how what we're accusing of happening in China is more egregious than any of this. 37 million people. And we're the countries, Canada, the United States, Australia, the UK, we're the countries that are lecturing China about human rights. And when they very correctly get provoked and insulted by us making these fucking claims, and they point out our disgusting, horrendous human rights record, people like Justin Ling say, oh, your new tanky talking points just dropped. That's how they react. That's how they respond. And when you poke at them, when you poke and prod at them, as I did today, and you get an actual answer about it, you realize that to them this is all okay, and because it's ultimately it's preserved this world order that is keeping them down because what they do is worse. And sometimes they don't want to come right out and admit that, but in these exchanges that I've been having lately, this is the ideology that emerges from that. As much as Justin Ling, again, would like to paint himself as being some kind of centrist and paint someone like me as being a tanky or authoritarian or whatever the fuck people say. When I'm the one that has been against this shit every moment that it's been going on, and I'm now advocating for a world in which we cooperate with this global superpower rather than antagonize them and rather than increase tensions with them. And Brady J, that's what aboutism. That's what about when you're the country that's doing this, and you say, "But what about China?" That's what aboutism. When you're the country that's genociding indigenous people in your own country, and you say, "What about China? What about Xinjiang?" That's what aboutism. Okay, not someone like me pointing out the crimes that my own government is committing. I mean, you see the VDEM charts. We clearly have more democracy because our line is higher. Well, that's right. That's actually something we can take a look at right now. Because it's all part of the same subject, right? Which is that, yes, the summit to democracy. Maybe we can watch a clip on the summit to democracy that America is running right now. And see, this is how we determine. Here's our little map. Here's our little map of the countries that are invited to the summit to democracy by who's free and who's not free. And the sources are, of course, let me open this in another tab here. The sources are, of course, Freedom House and the U.S. State Department. And they come up with this handy little chart according to Freedom House's Democracy Index. And as we'll always point out, every time you see a map like this, it's important to point out, where have we seen this map before? Because guess what, folks? It's always the same fucking map, isn't it? It's always the same map. Look, those are the free democratic countries, and those are the countries who abstained or voted against the UN General Assembly resolution on combating the glorification of Nazism, neo-Nazism, contemporary forms of racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance. It's always the same fucking map. This is the same map of countries that are accusing China of human rights violations. It's the same fucking map. These are the countries that refuse to sign the United Nations declarations on the rights of indigenous people. It's the same fucking map. These are the countries that want to withhold the vaccine IPs for coronavirus to the developing world. It's the same fucking map. It's always the same fucking map. And when you find yourself on the wrong side of that map, you have to start taking a long, hard look in the mirror and ask yourself some critical questions about what the fuck your country is up to, and whether you should support it or fight against it or struggle against it and support the vast majority of the developing world. When you find yourself agreeing with the countries in this map, the so-called democratic countries, the so-called free countries, when you find yourself agreeing with them, that's when you've gotten off the rails. That's when something very bad has happened. We made it up. Complete fabrication. The country with a legislative body approval rating of 28%. Let us teach you about democracy. That's right. The international community, folks. The international community. I wonder if there's a video about this democracy summit. It's from 46 minutes ago. Let's hear from good old President Biden. Again, the fucking father of mass incarceration in the States. Who never met a war or like foreign intervention that he didn't enthusiastically support and agree with. Let's hear from Joe Biden to lecture everyone about the inaugural Democracy Summit.
In the United States, we know as well as anyone that renewing our democracy and strengthening our democratic institutions requires constant effort. American democracy is an ongoing struggle to live up to our highest ideals and to heal our divisions, to recommit ourselves to the founding idea of our nation, captured in our Declaration of Independence, not unlike many of your documents. We say, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all women and men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Democracy
who still believes this shit
by accident. We have to renew it with each generation, and this is an urgent matter on all our parts, in my view, because the data we're seeing is largely pointing in the wrong direction. Freedom House reports in 2020 that marked the 15th consecutive year of global freedom in retreat. Another recent report from the International Institute of Democracy and Electoral Assistance noted more than half of all democracies have experienced a decline in at least one aspect of their democracy over the last 10 years, including the United States. In my view, this is the defining challenge of our time. Democracy, government of the people, by the people, for the people, can at times be fragile, but it also is inherently resilient. It's capable of self-correction and it's capable of self-improvement. And yes, democracy is hard. We all know that. It works best with consensus and cooperation. When people and parties that might have opposing views sit down and find ways to work together, things begin to work. But it's the best way to unleash human potential and defend human dignity and solve big problems.
We don't have a fucking
democracy.
democracy.
It's up to us to prove that. Democracies are not all the same. We don't agree on everything, all of us in this meeting today. But the choices we make together are going to define, in my view, the course of our shared future for generations to come. And as a global community for democracy, we have to stand up for the values that unite us. We have to stand for justice and the rule of law, for free speech, free assembly, a free press, freedom of religion, and for all the inherent human rights of every individual. My late friend, Congressman John Lewis, was a great champion of American democracy and for civil rights around the world, learning from and gaining inspiration from other great leaders like Gandhi and Mandela. With his final words as he was dying to our nation last year, he reminded our country, quote, democracy is not a state, it's an act. Democracy is not a state, it is an act. So over the next 2 days, we're bringing together leaders from more than 100 governments alongside activists, trade unionists, and other members of civil society, leading experts and researchers and representatives from the business community, not to assert that any one of our democracies is perfect or has all the answers, but to lock arms and reaffirm our shared commitment to make our democracies better, to share ideas and learn from each other, and to make concrete commitments of how to strengthen our own democracies and push back on authoritarianism, fight corruption, promote and protect human rights of people everywhere. We should be making it easy for people to vote, not harder. And that's going to remain a priority for my administration until we get it done.
Maybe you could actually do something about your opposition party and your precious democracy completely undermining the right of other people to participate in the democracy. Generally, in a democracy, you want people to be able to participate. Right now, you have one opposition party doing everything they can to ensure that your democracy is even more fake than it was previously. And this guy's talking about, we're going to do everything we can. They're not even doing anything. They're just watching it happen. They're literally just watching it happen and saying, hey, it's not fair that you're doing this. I don't like it. Cut it out. Stop doing that. And that's all they're doing. And all the actual avenues that they have to like fight against this, the bully pulpit, the Supreme Court, all this shit, they're just like, well, there's nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do because of like X and Y, like Senate numbers or whoever. The Supreme Court is this number of people and that's how it's supposed to be. So We have to maintain this decorum and civility. We have to like maintain this, these institutions at all costs. They're just letting it happen. They're not even doing anything.
Inaction is not an option.
They're literally doing inaction. They're doing nothing at all.
The United States closer to what we call a more perfect union.
They're literally getting farther away from it.
Engagement with and support of democracies around the world. To ensure that our democracies are strengthened by the voice of all citizens, this presidential initiative includes programs to advance.
Calm like a Tom. You're literally not passing the Voting Act named after John Lewis that you're talking about right now. Like, they can't be stressed enough. Invoking Mandela, of course. Well, Joe Biden did go on a top secret mission to South Africa to free Mandela, so he should invoke him in this case. He's literally not. They're talking about the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. They're literally not passing it.
Women and girls in civic engagement and political leadership, empowering the LGBTQ community, individuals to participate in democratic institutions, promote labor law reform, work organizations. It includes new lines of efforts with our partners to address online harassment and abuse and reduce the potential for countries to abuse new technologies, including surveillance technologies.
You're not a good president or even a decent human being, Joe. You know this.
Express their views. My fellow leaders, members of civil society, activists, advocates, citizens, we stand at an inflection point in our history, in my view. The choices we make, in my view, in this moment, are going to fundamentally determine the direction our world is going to take in the coming decades.
They will make the wrong choices.
Will we allow the backward slide of rights and democracy
yes.
to continue unchecked?
Yes, they will.
Or will we, together?
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Vision, not just a vision.
No, they would not.
Courage to once more lead the march of human progress and human freedom forward.
They would not do that.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News.
Very loud. They're not going to do shit. They're not going to do shit. Thank you, Risk Inverse, for gifting a sub. Thank you so much. It's such a priority that we're just not going to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. Yeah, destroy the... There's plenty of things they could do. Like their whole democracy, whatever flimsy democracy they have, such as it is just being flushed down the fucking toilet right now, and they're not doing anything about it. They're not in their own country, to say nothing about all these other countries that they want to talk about democracy. In their own country, this is happening. Who is this summit for? Well, Red Scary, it's for these fucking hypocritical losers in the international community to fucking hang out and jerk themselves off over how wonderful they are and how enlightened they are. That seems to be what it is for me. Despite all the evidence that runs to the contrary about how democratic these societies actually are. Citizens of both Koreas are in agreement that they don't want the US troops on the peninsula, but that's never on the table for any ROK government. Same for Japan, same for the Philippines, all over the world. Same for Hawaii. All over the world. Complete sham. Just a complete sham. There's this too, right? Like, this is how these people think. It's so revealing and it's so like frustrating. I was really kind of on one last night about this stuff. So then you have this Chinese government official, Qin Gang. He says people should be at the center of democracy. What China has is whole process people's democracy. From the people, to the people, with the people, for the people. Its purpose is to create a better life for the people. Read this white paper on China's democracy, and has a link to the white paper from the embassy. You have Sheena Chestnut Greetins from the China-Asia Dictatorship versus Democracy and National Security at, where's these credentials here? UT Austin. the LBJ School, the Clements Center, training the next generation of national security leaders at UT Austin. The Clements Center. The Strauss Center, Nonpartisan Global Affairs Research Center.
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
Oh my goodness, what's this? Hey, Calm Like a Tom, my goodness, thanks for gifting 5 subs. Hell yeah. Thank you so much, sir. So I was interested to see whether you can find the public funding for these places. That's always fun, right? Not an easy way to look at it. I don't feel like looking into it further. But again, these are the people that they fetishize this shit. They fetishize Western democracy above all else. And when someone from China comes in and says, like, actually, our system is actually democratic, and we have a whole paper designed to show you like how our system, which tries to like improve people's lives, its predominant function is to improve people's lives. So here's why it's actually more democratic. And they have these equations, these precious equations that they cling to. The most basic definition of democracy is a system in which parties lose elections. That's what that's democracy is. That's what democracy is to Sheena. But Rob, the Republicans have brought democracy to the unborn. Exactly. Yeah, the positions of the unborn means what evangelical preachers say the unborns want. That's right. That's how we know. Democracy is when your populace has 2.5 guns per household, and more democracy is more guns per household. Socialism is when less than one gun per household. Yeah. Depending on where. Sometimes socialism is all about the guns as well, which we should probably start taking a critical look at. So she says the most basic definition of democracy is a system in which parties lose elections. You have to actually alternate parties in power to be sure that one party won't balk and try to hold on to power at the point of a gun. So that's democracy, when you have two opposition parties that are just passing off power to one another. Two opposition parties that have different goals, that have different values, that are trying to do different things for people. That's democracy, is when you're just passing back and forth. So it's fair. You're passing back and forth between these two parties who don't agree on anything, so nothing can ever happen. So nothing that actually serves people actually ends up happening. That's democracy, apparently, according to Sheena, right? It's when these two opposition parties work against each other and just pass off power between one another and then just never accomplish anything. You know, I think that's part of the reason that I've gotten frustrated with this. You know, I'm not exactly a young person anymore. I'm approaching middle age here. It's been my whole life now, as long as I've paid attention to this. You know, the last 20 fucking years that I've been paying attention to this stuff. This continual slide in the wrong direction. This continual slide towards climate crisis. This continual slide towards all our social spending, all our social programs being means tested and slowly whittled away at, of taxes falling, letting of income inequality rising. It's been 20 years of this. And yeah, there's been a bunch of different parties that have been in power in the US, in Canada at that time. They've passed power back and forth. There's been conservatives in charge. There's been liberals in charge. They keep passing this back and forth. And this process of sliding in this direction has just continued completely unabated, despite mass protest movements, despite the WTO protests in the late 90s, despite the Iraq War protests, despite Occupy Wall Street, despite the student protests in Quebec and the UK, despite the Bernie Sanders campaign, despite the George Floyd protests, despite all this stuff, this process has just continued on completely unabated for decades now. And it doesn't seem like anyone, despite these big protest movements and their ability to exercise this kind of right to protest and right to express our free speech, has actually had any impact whatsoever on this endless process of capitalist expansion and imperialism continuing unabated. Nothing had slowed that down in any way. Okay? And according to Sheena, that's the definition of democracy. This is what I reject. Okay? I reject this. I was willing to give this stuff a chance even like 5-6 years ago. Even when I started doing this kind of commentary, I still kind of believed in this idea of liberal democracy, even a couple years ago. And maybe we can vote people in. We can vote the right people in, and we can win that way. We can do it the right way. But I don't know what other conclusion we're supposed to come to after the last 5 years, that like none of these things can ever really be meaningfully interrupted through these democratic institutions that we have. That's the inescapable conclusion, that this is just all fake. And I know it makes people like Sheena feel good that they can cling on to these values and these ideas, or Justin Ling, they feel they can cling on to these values, these Western values, and talk about how our system is more democratic or it's less violent. I know it feels comforting for them to like cling on to this, but it's not true. It's just not true. You have to just let go of this idea. You have to just forever let go of this idea that we can still cling on to this notion that we're like morally superior, that we have real freedom, we have real democracy, we have freedom of the press. We've committed crimes, but not as bad as these other countries that are worse, you know? We just have to let go of this idea. It's freeing. I understand why people cling to it, but you have to just let it go.